So today we're going to look at how we adjust an image using the levels adjustment layer. I will do this by finding our image within the week 1 folder, and we will go over here to the folder called levels adjustment, click it open, and there is a file from our textbook called chapter 3 example 2 JPEG. So go ahead and drag that over to your Photoshop program and it will open up, and you will see here now that this image needs more value in it. The values are a little bit slight, and that the colors could be stronger as well. So what we'll do is we will go over to this yin yang symbol and we will pull up the levels adjustment panel. So when it comes up, then you see this histogram of your image. This is defining the dynamic range of pixels that are within the image that you have open. And the left side here controls the darkness of the image, and the right side is controlling the lightness of the image. So as we pull in these triangles, we'll see that the dynamic range increases within the image and our image looks richer. The middle triangle controls the gamma in our image, which is the mid-range tones. And you can see that you have to be really careful with that, or it very quickly either blows out all of the detail of the image, such as this, or it becomes too dark quite quickly. So I'm going to leave that just about where it was when we opened the image, the gamma, and yeah, I'm going to look at how the image looks now and see what else it needs. So right, for levels, that's looking pretty good. So I'll go ahead and close out this properties panel for the levels tool, and I will look at instead hue and saturation, because now I'm going to move to adjusting the color of the image. The little boy looks a little bit more purple than maybe he should, especially right here. You can see it in his neck area and a little bit in the shadows of his face. So I will start adjusting the hue level here by bringing the continuum over. In our book, it has it set around 12. But as I look at it, to my eye, it's looking pretty good when I'm at +6. So for each of you, it might be a little bit different, but try it between 6 and 12, and you'll probably be getting a pretty good image. If you take it much higher, then he'll be starting to look really yellow like this, or green as you head more into the blues, or as you go lower, he looks really, really purple and magenta. So +6 was pretty good for me, and so that's where I'll keep it. The next bar that we're looking at is the saturation bar. As we pull that hotter, then our image becomes more colorful, more saturated color, and that looks pretty good. As you pull it lower, the saturation takes all of the color out of the image. So this is one way that you could make a black and white image, but there are other tools that I usually prefer to use for that. So I will leave this around +12. 12, 14 is good. And then the next bar is called lightness and darkness. This is the same controls that I used for levels. It's controlling the value of your image. So since we already adjusted that with levels, we are going to leave that continuum the same and move on to the next tool that I wanted to show you, which is the dodge, burn, and sponge tool here. We will start with the sponge tool located at the bottom of this flyout menu. And so if you pick that up as you select that tool, you'll see that the little sponge comes up in your icon in your toolbar. And then you'll see that the size of the brush is this circle that shows up in my image. So as I look at this, I'm looking for any part of the image where I feel like I would like to have more saturated color. And this tool is going to allow me to change the image within a very selective area. So I'm thinking that back here where the hotel is someplace where we could use more saturated color. So I will go to my layers panel over here, and I'll make sure that I'm clicked on the background layer of my image. And then I will go over to the control panel at the top of the program, and I will select saturate. Now my tool is ready to work. So I will begin dragging the brush over the area that I want the color to be more saturated. And you can see that this starts pulling the yellows and greens up in the image and just giving the image a little bit more vibrancy. So that's good on that side. And I will touch it up over here as well. And then I'm looking at the image, and it looks like maybe his mouth has gotten a little hot, a little bright. So I'm going to go ahead and take the same tool, the sponge, and I'm going to use desaturation here on this area of his mouth in order to just take a tad of the color out so it looks a little more natural. So I don't want to go too far because it's also a very striking part of the image, but that looks better to me. So I can look at all of the work I've done by turning off these eyes that are here in the layers panel. And this is a really important way to use your tools. So as I look at the levels, I can see the difference that the adjustment layer made by clicking the eye on and off and noticing that I've really increased the values and the saturation of the image a lot. And then here you can see how the color looks really different. So that's looking really nice. So now I just want to look at using the Dodge tool, which is a traditional photography tool from the darkroom that people would use to work on bringing more brightness to certain areas of an image. So as I adjust this image, it's really important to use a modest amount of exposure here. If we go too high, then we will blow out completely any detail that we have, and it'll look really unnatural. So I wouldn't go over 12% for me. I know that the book had listed 28%, but I felt like that's really pretty high. So, but on the face here, I'm going to use a highlight that's around 12%. And I could be controlling the shadows, the midtones, or the highlights, but the technique that I'm about to use, I'm just going to use the highlights. And then as I look at the size of this brush, it looks a little bit big. So I'm going to use my bracket keys to take that brush size down by pressing on the left bracket key that's right near the space bar backspace tool key. The bracket keys right below there are going to adjust my brush size. So right about there seems good. And so I'll just start bringing a highlight into this image. And you can see that it's a really powerful effect. It just is letting me seemingly paint a little sunshine onto his face. So I want to be subtle with it so that it looks natural. And this again is like a time when having a really good trained eye from a traditional art class will really help you out, because you'll realize I didn't like the way that highlight continued down as much, so I'll do a Control Z and take that little part out and then continue here on the shoulder. Just pulling a little bit of a highlight in here and going down the shoulder and then on the top of this arm. And that just helps to add a little bit more definition to our photo. Again, I think up here on his face it got a little strong. So I think I'm just going to add to that a little bit delicately. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And so that is one way to do color correction and value adjustment to an image using the adjustment layers. This is a really great tool for all of your different images, and I will want you now to try this again on some images that you have loaded in. Okay, thank you.